How about the great days of the Arabs? How about one of the most amazing stories of conquest in the history of the human species? How about that? Shall we talk about how the Muslims were stopped only by warfare? How they tried to take the world over and almost did so in 25 years? Did you know about that? Did you know anything about that? Or you thought it was always a religion of peace? You heard that the Crusades, the Christian Crusades you heard about. That's because you were brainwashed into hearing about only the Crusades. But what you don't know is that the Christian Crusades were counter-crusades against Muslim invasions. That you don't know. Well, I can tell you that story. The Byzantine army being smashed at the Battle of the Yarmouk, a tributary of the Jordan River in 634. You want to hear about that? You want to hear about the Muslims overrunning most of the world in only 25 years? How they took over Syria, Damascus, Palmyra, Antioch, Jerusalem, each city falling almost without resistance to the Muslims, and most of the populations of these regions going over to Islam. And then the Muslims turned east. The Persians found a great general in Rustam. They had a great, great army with a force of elephants. And for 3 days they fought the Arabs at Qadisiyah in 637, and at last the army broke and they ran. Then the conquest of Persia followed. You hear that Persia is a Muslim nation, but you don't know they were not always Persians. And the conquest of Persia followed, and the Muslim Empire pushed far into western Turkestan and went eastward until it met the Chinese. Egypt fell without resistance to the new Muslim conquerors, who were filled with a fanatical belief in the sufficiency of their one book, the Quran, who then wiped out the vestiges of the book-copying industry of the Alexandria Library. Yes, the Muslims burnt the Alexandria Library to the ground. Sound familiar? What happened next? The Muslim tide of conquest next poured along the north coast of Africa to the Straits of Gibraltar and into Spain. Spain was invaded by the Muslims in 710. The Pyrenees Mountains were reached in 720. In 732, the Arabs reached almost the center of France, but then something happened. That's right, something happened in France. Here the Muslims were stopped for good at the Battle of Poitiers, and the Muslims were thrown back as far as the Pyrenees again. And I could go on, but in only 25 years, the relentless Muslim attacks continued, and the Arabs almost conquered the entire world. But it was stopped. It was stopped by warfare only. Unfortunately, you don't understand why Bush went into Iraq. Unfortunately, many of you don't understand anything about what wars we are fighting or why we are fighting them. Unfortunately, you don't understand that there are 50 conflicts on the globe right now, and almost every one of the conflicts consists of Muslims not getting along with their neighbors. That's because the so-called progressives in the news business have a different agenda than you do. And we can talk about that. We can talk about the positive sides of the Muslim invasion if you want, because there are some. We can talk about how the excited Arabic mind, which is a phenomenal mind, the Arab intelligence is well known and incredible, and how the Arab mind, once it conquered, moved across the world even more swiftly and dramatically than had the Greek mind 1,000 years before it. That the whole Western world, or actually almost the whole world west of China, was stimulated by the Arab mind. And that broke up old ideas and developments of new ones that came along after the conquests. And how the active Jewish tradition of speculation and discussion actually integrated and pollinated with the Arab mind in Spain. And how it gave a great flowering to ideas and learning. And how in Central Asia, the Arabs met the Buddhists. And how the Arab mind or the Muslim mind met the Buddhist mind. And then there were material achievements of Chinese civilization, and how the Arab learned the manufacture of paper from the Chinese, and that made printed books possible. And finally, the Arab Muslims came into touch with Indian mathematics and philosophy. And very soon something interesting happened. The intolerance and the self-sufficiency of the early Muslims, which made them believe the Quran was the only book that was necessary, was dropped. And learning sprang up everywhere in the footsteps of the Arab conquerors. By the 8th century, there was an educational organization throughout the whole Arabized world. By the 9th century, learned men in the schools of Cordoba in Spain were corresponding with learned men in Cairo. What I'm getting at is the throwback Islamists that we are facing around the globe right now actually predate the 9th century Arab mind. They are not even at the level of their 9th century ancestors. They're somewhere around the 7th or 8th century of early Islam.
Hot Talk.